Hello and welcome to Digital Marketing This Week. It's episode number 25. This is all about how to write convincing copy. We want to talk about copywriting in this particular episode. So, of course, brought to you by Seriously Simple Marketing. My name is Chris Mercer. I'm an optimizer, a content developer, host of DMTW, and you can just call me Mercer. Okay, so this week's focus topic again is copywriting. This is everything to do with, and when you're thinking about this, it's anything that you're writing. Okay, so one of the questions I get is like, what exactly is copywriting? And copywriting is anything that you write to get some sort of action from another person. That's all it really is. So copywriting would be emails. If you're going to write an email, you're copywriting your emails because you're trying to get somebody to click on a link. If they are sales pages, obviously it's that, getting people to click on the button. And same thing with VSL or video sales letters. You have copywriting that are for those as well. So that's all about copywriting. That's what we're going to cover for this one. So when you're going through this whole lesson today, or when our little chat today, that's what you want to think about. Now, if you are watching us pre-recorded or listening to us pre-recorded on a podcast or something, no worries. Just go to seriouslysimplemarketing.com. You can actually join our notification list there, and that'll give you the invite to the live sessions where you can ask questions. And we have some pretty decent chats every once in a while after the official show, and those we just sort of keep for the insiders. So make sure you join us there. It is completely free. Okay, so let's talk about the goal. Remember, the goal with all of these, get one idea, act on that one idea, then go back and repeat the process. Now, I've done my best to take what can be a complicated topic like copywriting and simplify it. So we're going to go over a formula that's a nice little 4-step formula that should be pretty easy to play with, but it can get infinitely more complicated the deeper you go into it. And that's not the goal. The goal is just to start, practice a little basic of a formula, and then get a little better, then get a little better, then get a little better. And that's how you become a good copywriter. You absolutely have to practice. So with this, again, just take that one idea, that one step that really makes the most sense to you, and just focus on that, and then do that, and then go back and try another step. And that's why we have these, of course, recordings available. So let's jump into it. This is all about copywriting. Now, how to write convincing copy. And part of the reason that I did this graphic here, we've got a little graphic of a kind of a salesperson like at a Best Buy or some other big box retailer where the salesperson's demonstrating equipment and letting the customer play with the equipment. And that's kind of how I want you to think about copywriting, because very often, especially in the online world, we forget that we're not really inventing new things. We don't really create this stuff. Like a lot of times it's sold like that, and you talk to the gurus, it's like, oh wow, we're gonna do this, and this is a brand new thing that's never been done before in the history of time. But it's always been done someplace else, somewhere else. It's just a lot of it's been offline, right? In fact, a lot of the great copywriters actually use a lot of older copywriting, and I mean like 1920s, 1930s older copywriting, because that was back when they were just figuring out like, wow, if I ask people to do things in a certain way, I will get better results. And that's where copywriting really sort of hit its heyday, or at least its birth, maybe not its heyday, but its birth for sure. And so that's why they use that. So when you're thinking about copywriting, remember that it's all about having that connection, okay? And it's helpful to keep this in mind again as this retailer type perspective. Like what would happen here if this was a regular retail location, or if this was an offline location, and how should I do this? So thinking about when we're going through this, why are we going to care? We're going to care today because we're looking for tips on persuasion, a simple copywriting formula that you can use. I talked about that already. And of course, the biggest reason that copywriters fail. So I'm going to point that out as well. And of course, you'll more than likely pick up a few other tips. So make sure you keep some notes out and about. So let's talk about what copywriting is. Now, we talked in the very, very beginning about how it's basically the idea that you're writing to get a certain action from the other party that you're writing to. Okay, so technically, anytime that if you're even texting somebody and you want them to respond back to you, that's kind of copywriting if you think about it. I mean, anytime that you are writing for the purpose of getting a result, that's what copywriting is. Okay, that's all it is. And it's just mostly used again for, when you're doing a blog post, that's technically copywriting, because in your blog posts, you still want to get people to leave comments, to share your post. There's still actions in there. So don't even think, and blog posts, don't get me wrong, they need to be content, and there's a different style to them for sure. But it's still a form of copywriting in a way. But overall, copywriting is a conversation. And that's what you really need to think about it. Remember, going back to that example we first put up of the little like big box retailer sort of offline conversation, when you work with a salesperson, when you have a really great experience with a salesperson, part of the reason that you have that is because you're having a conversation with somebody, you have a connection with somebody, you know that they know what they're talking about, they're able to point off the different features, they're able to ask answer questions that you might ask, and you can have a conversation about it, and it just makes sense for you to purchase at the end, right? That's kind of what this whole offline world is like, and you can do the exact same thing online as long as you're thinking about it in terms of a conversation. Okay, so it's not a pitch fest, it's just you're having a conversation with somebody. The problem is they're not in front of you. And so it makes it a little more difficult. Like we show this image here where it's kind of like, you presenting your page. Let's say you're imagining your page. If you could sit in front of their computer and say, hey, listen, here's what I mean by this. Like you can't actually be there, right? It's just you or them and the computer screen in most cases, whether it's an email or a sales page. And we'll use sales page kind of going forward as the main example, since that's what everyone's probably most familiar with. But since you can't be there, you have to sort of think through, what could this conversation look like? What objections could they be coming up with? What questions might they have here? What questions would I have if I were going to be reading it and not knowing anything about this particular thing? So that's the sort of thing. When you think about it in terms of a conversation, it gets a whole lot easier to do some copywriting. But, very important but, you need to make sure that you connect, okay? So a lot of times people will have a conversation, but it's very one-sided. And I've been guilty of this. So we'll create copy that'll come out and be like, hey, here's what we've got, and here's what it is, here's what it does, here's go for it, here's what it is, right? Go click here. And it's kind of disconnected. It doesn't really cover the main benefits. It doesn't really present it in a way that the audience understands, or even in the words that the audience would use. A lot of times we'll use jargon, and I like using VSL a lot as an example of jargon, because I use that term every day, multiple times every day. And I'm so used to saying VSL that I don't think about the people who have no idea what I'm talking about. And one of the things I love about digital marketing this week and the other webinars and courses that we do is because I get questions about that. And I love that, because it reminds me, like, wow, I got caught using jargon. And I think VSL is a very basic term, and it is, but there's a lot of people who are just starting out. So they're at that point where they're learning basic terms, just like I did. I didn't know what a VSL was when I first started. And so even things like that, where if you type in something like, hey, this is going to help you improve your VSLs, you might think it's perfectly fine, but then somebody else is going to be like, okay, well, I have no idea what that is, so don't know if this can help me. And you lose them, you lose the connection. The other thing about connection is actually going back and connecting with them emotionally. And this is where your writing can change. So, and again, I'll give you sort of some tips on this. Initially, if you're not writing to connect at all, if you're not writing in conversational form, you want to start there. Keep it basic, keep it simple. Tell your story. But if you are doing that and you need to bring it up to the next level, then your next step would be to connect on a deeper level and in a more emotional level. So you can say, something similar to this product. Let's say let's go through. Well, let's just make up a product here. So let's make up. You've got a sales page for a widget that improves traffic. Okay, so let's just say it does that. It improves traffic, and so you want to pitch this, and so you'll say, hey, listen, I've got this, here's this product that improves traffic and get more people to go to your website, right? Get more eyeballs on your website. That's awesome, and that's great, and that's a start. But wouldn't it be better to bring them into an emotional state, to connect with them? So first you sort of say, like, listen, I get where you're at. It's tough sometimes when you create all these pages and you have all this time that's invested, and you've created this offer that you really need people to see and that will absolutely help them, and then you open it up and you put it out on the web and you publish it, and then nothing happens because there's nobody seeing it, just crickets. That's painful. And I realized that, and because I realized that, I took my time to research how to do this traffic, and I actually created this tool that I use myself to get traffic to my own site. And because it's been so successful, I want to be able to share it with you. Now all of a sudden there's a whole different connection. Now, yeah, it took some more words, but you're connecting with them in a whole emotional way. Okay, so that's kind of what we mean about connecting. So this is the point where I think a lot of beginner copywriters fail, where most of them will fail, is because there's not a connection there. This also comes to pass in terms of objections, in terms of the reasons that they want to buy. Okay, so the reasons they don't want to buy, which is objections, the reason they do want to buy. People will miss that mark. So this is where they talk about the hook or the angle. Okay, so you've got a sales page and it's got a certain hook or an angle. So we could talk about how, in the example I was just mentioning, we could say, the angle that we're taking with our traffic tool that we're about to sell here, our imaginary traffic tool, is that it's frustrating to build something and invest all this time and then have nobody see it, right? So the angle is, don't waste your time. Like, you've got it, here's a simple tool, it can bring traffic to it, and that way you don't have to waste your time building out a product that nobody's ever going to see. So that's one particular angle. The other angle we could take would be something similar to, let's say we were dealing with paid traffic, right? Maybe your tool helps with paid traffic. And so now it comes to, hey, instead of wasting thousands and thousands of dollars on traffic that's not going to convert, right? Let's get the right traffic to your page. And so that could be a different angle. So people are going to respond to the, hey, I don't want to waste my time and build this product and not have anybody see it angle. And there are also a whole different group of people who are going to respond to the hook that might be, you know what, I don't want to waste money on paid traffic. Let's get the right traffic to my site. I can get traffic. I know how to do that. I need to know how to get the right traffic to my site. And that's what this tool will help me do. So two different angles. And that's where you want to be able, you want to test those. That's why everything comes down to split testing. You'll hear me say that 100,000 times, hopefully, between now and the time that you're done with DMTW, because it is the most important thing to split test. But the ability to connect to what they want, to test different hooks, and then to answer objections. One of my favorite times, and I can't have a specific example, I wish I did, but there have been numerous times when I'm reading through a sales page, and they're kind of going through and they're telling the story of the product, and they'll say something like, going through all the sort of thing, and then they'll coming toward maybe the pitch, and where I'm honestly in my head, I'm thinking, boy, this sounds really good, but I bet you this is going to be like a recurring thing every month. I'm going to have to pay for this. And then right after that, the copywriter says something like, now I bet you're probably thinking this is a monthly subscription. It's not. It's a one-time fee. And I'm like, whoa, like, talk about connection, talk about rapport. Like, not only did it come through and build rapport to get me to read that far, but the fact that I was thinking exactly what it said, that's great, and that leads to conversions. So you want to go through that process of objections, right? So I bet you're thinking something along the lines of, this tool is going to get a ton of traffic, but it's not going to be the right traffic, right? So because people might be thinking that if it's a traffic tool, and here's why that's here's totally get it, understand. Here's what's different. Here's why it is the right traffic. Here's the different ways you can customize the tool or whatever it is. But being able to stick inside their head and have those conversations again. Remember, we talked about it being a conversation. When you have that conversation and you're on target, you are going to connect to the perfect buyer, and that's what you want to do. And roughly, just so you know, there's probably 1 to maybe 3 of those for every 100 people that see your page, in general. Not all the time, but in general. So it depends upon your traffic source. But when you're thinking about planning out your numbers, this is also an important thing. So figure 1 to 3% conversion rate on, like, let's say a typical sales page, or right? So just a regular basic sales page, and let's say it's a cold traffic type of thing, where you're sending cold traffic. Figure 1 to 3%, depending upon the product and how well the traffic is matched to it. But if you're in that mode and you've connected with the audience, you get higher levels of conversion, and you're talking to that one person. Remember, you're having a conversation not with 100 different people who are going to see the page. You're having a conversation with the one person who is going to buy it. And that's a huge, huge tip right there. When you're doing your copywriting, don't write to the people who are not going to buy it and try to convince them to buy it. And I think a lot of people start like that. They go, okay, here's my market. I'm going to write to my market, which is a mass of people. Number one, you're already sort of off base there because you're writing to a mass of people instead of one person. But they write to this mass of people who need to be convinced to buy something. And a lot of times people don't need to be convinced to buy something. They just need to be aware that it's out there. And if it makes sense for them to purchase, they will. And so that's how you think about it. When you're having this conversation, have this conversation with the one person who, as long as it makes sense, is totally going to buy it. And you're explaining yourself to this person. That's all you need to do. Okay, so let's get into some more specifics. How do you connect? Here's a formula we can use. I'm a fan of formulas. I like things that you can repeat and things that you can test. So I'm going to give you a nice little copywriting formula. Be sure to write this down. It's 4 simple steps. Hopefully it'll be easy to remember, but 4 little steps here. First step, here's what I have. Second step, here's what it does. Third step, here's how you know. And fourth and final step, here's what to do next. Okay, so let's talk about these. I'm gonna go back here. Here's what I have. Here's what I have is honestly a very simple description of your product. Hey, I've got this new traffic tool. I just wanted to release to the public. Kind of simple, kind of short, doesn't have to be super extensive, but it just covers that you have this product. Then you go into what it does. Here is where you want to bring in features and benefits. And really, it's more benefits and features, because the benefits are what's in it for the prospect. The feature is the specific action or item itself. So let's say, for example, you could, like we talked about earlier, let's say this imaginary traffic tool that we're selling can adjust traffic sources. Like you can customize your traffic sources so that you can, okay, so the feature would be you can customize traffic sources. The benefit would be so that you can get a better match to traffic and improve your conversions, right? So that you can control the exact traffic and make sure you get the right traffic on your page, seeing your offer, so that you can lead to higher conversions. So the benefit, you could lead with the benefit and say, listen, in order to make sure that you get higher conversions on your page and sell more of your products, you can, and then you go with the feature. The feature would be customize the traffic that the tool sends you. But you start with that benefit, reason being because if you start with that, you get that connection again, the what's in it for me, right? I'm reading this page, I'm having this conversation, I go, well, actually, I do want to make sure that I guarantee I get better results on my page. And so how would I do that? And so this tool makes sense. It actually can customize. Okay, cool. I would want to do that. This feature makes sense. This is great. Let me continue reading. That's just sort of the nods. And we've talked about this in conversions when we've talked about in past digital marketing this week episodes. We've talked about conversions and the idea of nods. And a nod is when that customer is nodding to themselves going, why, yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Or why, yes, that's exactly what I would want. Or why, yes, I would like this. And they're doing this inside their head, internally nodding at all these little steps throughout your funnel. The more nods you get, the higher your conversions are. Pretty simple. So the more nods, the higher the conversions. So the what it does section is going to be a little meatier, and that's again where you're describing benefits and features. Okay, so what's in it for them, and what these pieces are of it, and what's in it for them. What do those pieces do for them? Now the here's you know section, here's how you know. Basically, it's here's how you know I'm telling the truth, right? So here's how you know what I said is true. Here's how you know it works. Here's how you know I'm right. That's sort of what you're explaining here. So what I have is this traffic tool. Here's all the cool stuff it does. Here's all the cool stuff that stuff lets you get as a result. So here's the what's in it for you benefit. Here's how you know that I'm telling the truth. That's what people are going to want to know because they're skeptical by nature, which makes total sense because everyone's bought stuff that maybe not have lived up to its, headline, so to speak. And so they want to make sure that there's a reasonable chance that when they purchase this, there is going to be the more than likely that this will actually fulfill its promise. Okay, that's what they're looking for. You don't have to get 100% shadow of a doubt. Don't go for that. You need to go for the, more than likely this is, because that's what people are willing to risk a little bit. They're always willing to risk a little bit. And the more you minimize risk, the better it is. But you don't need to nail it down ironclad. Because sometimes when you start doing that, people overly do that. And then it creates the objection of like, wow, why is this guy talking about how perfect this is all the time? Unless there's something weird. Because this seems like he's screaming a little too loudly. So what you go for is it's better than average chance that, yes, okay, this is going to do what it says it's going to do. Now, how can you do that? This is stuff you're the one doing it, then connect with them personally. Okay, we did this with a program that we have called Help Desk Live, which is like a kind of this super support level where we do this weekly sort of mastermind get together every week with Serious and Simple Marketing. And anybody that owns a Serious and Simple Marketing product can purchase this. And what it basically is, a sales page was us just sort of, or me in particular, saying, hey, listen, thanks for purchasing the product. You have incredible support with email support, but I wanted to let you know about this new thing that we've got. It's every week. It's a live webinar, but it's, where basically it's a mastermind where you can come on and, we can share screens and let's build business together, and this whole little story process that we went. But it was important that how they know it's true is because it was me behind it. They knew me, they knew I had created the other products. And so it was important that I was the reason that it was going to work. I was the reason that what I was saying this product was more than likely what it was. And obviously led to conversions. So the other ways you can do that besides yourself, because it may not matter. Like, to be honest, people may be like, okay, whatever, who are you? It doesn't really matter to them. And it maybe doesn't help you. And if it doesn't help you, not a problem. You can go with testimonials. You can go with social proof. You can go with screen captures that might show the product working, or a demonstration of some sort. There are lots of different ways that you can do these things. And everybody that tells you need social proof, you need testimonials, you need to show who you are, you need to build your authority, you need to build credibility, you need all this stuff. You need to build security. So things like a guarantee is security. Like, what if it goes wrong? Can I get my money back? That's a guarantee. You want to make sure you have guarantees in there. All of that stuff is, here's why it's true, right? Here's what it does. Here's why all that's true. Because if it wasn't true, I wouldn't offer a guarantee. And that's why the guarantee section goes in here. right? So again, this is a copywriting formula that has a lot of little steps in between these steps. But if you generally just consider, here's what I have, here's what it does, here's why that's true, right? So here's how you know that that's true. And then you just go into, after that, it's like, great, now you know what's true, here's what to do next. Okay, it's $97 or $97 a month or $37 or $8,000, whatever it is, here, or just click here to get started. Whatever, you got to ask them. And you want to make sure you ask them to take action, because they will not figure it out on their own. In general, people are too busy and they don't want to do any thinking about it, and they just want to be sort of led through the process. And as long as that process makes sense for them, they will continue down the process. The second that you stop and the second that you lose connection with them, that's when they're going to dump off. So that's what we want to focus on. So here's what I have, here's what it does, here's how you know, here's what to do next. And we've talked about this in terms of sales pages, but let's talk about it briefly in terms of an email. Okay, so let's say if you're doing an affiliate offer. So you can say like, hey, listen, here's this page I just came across, Optimized Press 2.0. It's a great theme, and I wanted to make sure that you knew about it. It allows you to drag and drop, and it's customized specifically for marketers, so that you don't have to waste time coming up with great designs because they're already built in, right? So I've got a little bit of features and benefits. That's just one of the things that you'll discover, including, and but you also see how marketers like Ryan Dice and Chris Farrell and other people are using it. So that's kind of the how I'm telling the truth part. Click here to take a look at Optimized Press and see for yourself. Let me know if you have any questions. And now there's my call to action. So it can be very short. You don't have to do this in this 3,000 word diatribe. And so when you're doing this, it can be formatted as an email. I would also say, and I didn't put this in a slide, but I would also say, when you're writing, less is more. Less is always more. So start with the smallest possible, briefest possible way that you can do this. And then expand upon there. Now, if it's impossible for you to do that, then start with writing down everything you can as a brain dump, and then cut it by half, and then cut it by half again. And what you typically do is you write your first version, as long as it covers that formula, sort of write out that, those 4 main steps. Think about all the different ways you can say, here's what I have, write them down. Think about all the different ways you can say, here's what it does, write them down. Think about all the different ways, and there'll be a lot of these too, all the different ways of here's how you know I'm telling the truth, and then all the different ways of here's what to do next. And then wait about 24 hours, let your brain sort of just, stay off of it for a while, come back a day later, cut it by half, cut it back a day later, and cut it by half again. And then you've got something that you can test. Okay, because at that point, you've sort of gotten rid of all the fluff and you've rewritten it a bunch of times, and you'll just have a much cleaner copy. All right, so let's talk about the one great thing all copywriters do, okay? So the one thing all great copywriters do is tell stories. They all tell stories. So here's an example again. So, my headline goes here, and I'll talk about what I have and what it does and how you know it's true. Then I'm going to tell you what to do and give you a call to action. Like I'm telling you a story. A lot of great copy will be a story. When we first talked about this imaginary traffic tool that we're pitching on our sales page here, we talked about it when I created that initial content, right? Our test version, it was told in the story. Hey, listen, I've been trying, and I created a product, and it was horrible because I spent all this time doing it, and I loved it, and I thought it was great design, and my friends all loved it, my family loved it, and I was part of a Facebook group who said, yeah, this is rocks, and then I published it, and nothing happened because I had no traffic. And I sat there and realized to my horror that I just had wasted a bunch of time because I had no idea how to get traffic. And I can get a few bits and pieces coming in here and there, but overall I was seeing no conversions because I couldn't figure out how to get traffic. So I spent the next 6 months researching traffic and really putting the effort into learning that. And now I've got this traffic tool that I've developed and have been using for my own site, which has taken my site from 0 hits per month to 55,000 hits per month. Let's pretend you've got a graphic that shows that, right? Like a Google Analytics proof. And then, you can go through, and I've got this tool, and here's what happened. And again, you're telling the story. You're engaged in the story, and people are engaged with you because they want this to be true. Like, people are skeptical, but they have hope. And when you write stories, you can bring them into this feeling of them sort of suspending their disbelief, like, yeah, maybe that's not, 0 to 55,000 hits in 3 months. I don't think so. And then all of a sudden you show a graphic and they're like, wow, that's kind of cool, right? So they want to have hope. They want to believe you, but they'll be a little naturally skeptical. And when you tell stories, there's so much emotion that comes into play. There's so much connection that comes into play. Just taking any sales copy you have and turning it in terms of a story will help your conversions. Just doing that, just that one little technique. So that is the one great thing that all copywriters will do. And when you watch VSLs, right, so video sales letters, if you watch those, or if you go through a really good sales page copy, you will notice it's told in terms of a story. If you follow Ryan Dyson, Digital Marketer, you'll see a ton of their copy is all told from Ryan's point of view. Now, he's not the one writing it, right? So he's got people that write emails and write copy for him. He's not physically doing it all the time. There's no way he could keep up with all that. But it's all told from Ryan's point of view. Ryan's connecting with the audience. Ryan's explaining a story about how this helped or how this is going to help or something like that. And it pre-frames the connection, and then the sales page of the video goes through and continues the story. And it just is this thing where you sort of just make sense. It's like, hey, you know what? And I've done this. I've gone to these emails and Ryan talks about a particular product and I'm like, you know what? I already know from the email that if this thing is less than, you know, 10 bucks, if it's one of those little tripwire offers he does, then I'm probably going to buy it because whatever, 7 bucks. I know I'm going to a whole nother funnel. I realize that, but it sounds like as long as this video thing makes sense to me, this whatever tool he's promoting on this email, I'm probably going to buy it. So I click on it. I've already made the decision to buy. I click on it. I go through the sales page, and through the sales page, he's just not getting in my way. He's sort of explaining like, yeah, this is why this continues to make sense. And then by the end, it's like, okay, go ahead and click the button. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. 7 bucks. So I thought it was going to be. Click on it, buy it. You know, mostly I'm not buying the upsells. Occasionally I will, you know, if it happens to make sense. But for the tripwire offers, it's, you know, super low risk and I get all this cool stuff. And it's because they've involved me in this story. And he tells everything in terms of a story, right? And it's a conversation between me and him, which is also important. Remember, we talked about this earlier. You're not talking to a mass of people on the other side of the screen. You were talking to one person. So figure out who that avatar is and go through and talk to them in the way that they need to be talked to, right? To explain it to that person. So if you haven't done that, take a few minutes to at least sit down and figure out like, who is your ideal client? Who's that ideal buyer? And that way you can have a better opportunity to actually match their voice. All right. Finally, I want to bring this one giant point, okay? Great copywriting will always beat great design, okay? So here's what I mean by that. I see people playing with like, where should the photo go and where the image goes and, you know, headline and all this other stuff. And they can get caught up in the design of the page. The best the best pages, best converting pages that I've seen, and I see a lot of pages that convert, a lot. I see a lot that don't convert. Normally, the ones that have that cool design that look all sort of fresh and new and look really awesome and everybody will vote for because they look cool, do not convert. Because they're not made to convert, they're made to look good. And that's a very different reaction, right? So they'll get that look good reaction. They'll get that, yeah, this gives you a really good branding image reaction, but they don't work. And then you have these really ugly white backgrounds, skinny little column sales pages with buttons everywhere. They work just fine, right? They just trounce those other pages. Same copy, let's assume that it's the same copy, but they trounce the other pages. So what happens, what you start learning is that if you have a really strong copywriter, right? If you've done really strong copywriting and your offer is really good and it matches the audience, it doesn't matter if it's poorly designed. So don't worry about that. You can use tools like Optimized Press that help you kind of create some rudimentary stuff really quick and easy, and it will give it a great look, and that's all you need. You know, and technically, if you just did a regular post and just had black and white text, that would be fine too. It's not perfect, but it's good enough to test the copy. But great copywriting will always, always trump great design. So don't trick yourself into thinking, okay, well, this page doesn't work because the design's wrong. If the page isn't working, it's because your copywriting is wrong. And you should test your hooks, test your copy, come up with a different angle, come up with a better story, a different way of saying the same thing, whatever, but come up with something different and test that first, because you'll see bumps off of that before you will see bumps off of the design. Now, if your copy is great already and it's converting pretty strongly, design can help with that copy. Design can enhance that copy. And some ways that you can do that would be with the idea of subheadlines. So you've got like a big headline that sort of has your main sort of pre-frame for what's about to come, right? In terms of the copy. And then knowing that people scan, because people generally won't read top to bottom, not anymore, if they ever did. And so you've got the big headline, you can put subheadlines throughout the copy. Those subheadlines could be like a story just to themselves. And we've used this to some extent, it's worked pretty well, where you've got the main headline and then we just pretend they're going to skip all the details and they just read the headline, the subheadlines, and then look for what to do next. And that's how we write that copy. So it's like a really skeletal structure, but you've got the headline, the subheadlines, and the subheadlines actually make sense if you read them, just the subheadlines, which is kind of the trick to that. So you read the headline and all the subheadlines, and that makes perfect sense. just if you were reading those. And then we'll go back and fill in the details of each one of those subheadlines, so that we've got, if somebody did get caught on a particular thing and be like, oh, well, I'm not really sure that's true. Like, you know, how did he get from, you know, 0 to 55,000 hits in 3 months? That's kind of weird. Well, then in that if that was a subheadline, the details would be there, and it would show like screenshots or testimonials or proof or you know, explain how I did that or whatever, right? And that way, if again the subheadline catches attention, they've got those details, then the entire job of that copy is to pass them back to the next subheadline and get them to continue to scan down. Ultimately, so that the entire offer makes sense, and they click on the call to action button, which we tell them at the end is what we want them to do. So I hope that makes sense again. And the main point of this slide is just don't get caught up on design. A lot of people get caught up in, oh, it doesn't look good enough, doesn't look good enough. Ugly sales pages convert. They convert all the time. Ugly video sales letters convert, just the ones that are regular PowerPoint ones that don't have all the, I mean, people are getting into the swooping text and what they call kinetic text. It's the text that moves up and down and stretches left and right, and animations and all sorts of other things that are coming out. And there's lots of tools that you can use that can create those. And those are cool. And those do generally convert better than a regular PowerPoint presentation, or they can, but you don't need to do that in the beginning. In the beginning, just do your regular PowerPoint, get it out, get quick and dirty, and test. You want to make sure you get the right hook. Once you've got the right hook, then you can start making that hook perform better. And that's where you come in with like, hey, let's go ahead and try some different elements of design here. Or let's try, instead of a regular PowerPoint video sales letter, we're going to do a doodle type sales letter, one of those ones that kind of draw the cartoons out. And you can try stuff like that. But first, you nail down your copy. All right, so we're going to be coming up to the end here. It's been about a half hour or so. So what was your one idea? Was it the idea that you should write in terms of a story? Was it the formula, right? The here's what I've got, the here's what it does, the here's why that's true, and the here's what to do next? Was it the ability to connect and to think about like, how can you connect? Because remember, you're connecting with one person and you're not trying to convince them. You're just reassuring them they're making the right decision the entire way. Okay, so it's the way you connect. And remember, action brings results. So think about what's the one thing you took. Don't try to do all of these because you'll just kind of do them all a little bit and then nothing's going to work. So just choose the one thing. And if you're not writing in terms of stories, try your copy, create a new sales page that just writes the same thing in terms of a story, and then test that, right? Use something like Visual Website Optimizer, which by the way, just opened up a super cheap offer. It was like 2,000 hits now, which they didn't do before. So this is kind of exciting. But it's like 2,000 hits and it's $9 a month. So even if you have a low traffic site, there's no reason you should not be split testing. You should always be running a split test. So that's makes it really, really cheap to do that. But anyway, so test your ideas, right? And go back, and then once you've sort of proven and learned, then you go back and pull something else. And maybe you start writing in terms of the formula, or figuring out how you can make a better connection. So with that, again, if you're watching or listening to us on pre-recorded, just go to SeriousySimpleMarketing.com. You can join the Insiders Club. It is completely free and it will allow you into what we are about to jump into now, which is the DMTW Insiders Club, where we're going to answer questions and I kind of come down off the virtual stage and hang out and have a conversation with people. So if you are not part of that, I do thank you again for listening and watching, and we will see you next week on Digital Marketing This Week. This has been episode 25, How to Write Convincing Copy.